This is Leslie Kane, and you're listening to That UFO Podcast.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to That UFO Podcast. My name is Andy, and you might have seen in the last day or so that a new group has formed in Hollywood, of all places, bringing together the likes of filmmakers, producers, actors, ufologists, researchers, and more. It's called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, and I am delighted to welcome with me from the group, filmmaker, Emmy-nominated award nominee, a hell of an achievement. I have Serena DC. Serena, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me, Andy. I'm a huge fan, so I'm excited to be part of it.
It's to have you on, and this all came out of nowhere, Serena, in the last day or so, and people are talking about it online, so a lot of ground to cover. But first, before we talk about the HDA, as I'm going to shorten it to, otherwise the podcast might go long saying it every single time, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself first, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I'm an investigative filmmaker, and I've been obsessed with the stars since I was just a little girl. And so 7 years ago, I started coming over to Hollywood and making films. My first movie was called Contact the CE5 Experience. So I was lucky enough to meet Dr. Stephen Greer, go to his house, become his friend, and be mentored by him. And he basically taught me how to do CE5. And since then, I have seen so many UFOs. I've had what I believe to be telepathic contact with beings from another planet. It's been really life-changing, you know. And so just had a new movie come out called We Are Not Alone, which I guess delves deeper into that world. And we have some really big names on there, like Jacques Vallée, who's just incredible, Paula Harris, Danny Sheehan. But it's just so exciting to be in this UFO world right now, because I believe that we will be the generation that gets to shake hands with a being from another planet. And that's pretty freaking cool, Andy.
It would be, and you've mentioned a few big names. We'll talk about We Are Not Alone at the end of the podcast, because it's a nice way to, I think, to bring it home. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, you mentioned some big names there involved in your own documentary. Some of those names are also involved in the group. So let me read this first. This is the goal from the website of the group, and the description in the podcast has all these links too. The goal of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is to provide a more unified voice in the media leading up to and following the impending revelation of the presence of extraterrestrial life. Disclosure through storytelling in feature films, documentaries, and TV programming. We are a media-centric resource, teaming those actively working within the research side of UAP/ET with those actively working as storytellers. That's quite a mission statement, Serena. Yeah. Let me ask first, because you're the representative for the group on the pod, how did all this come about?
Well, it's interesting. So one of the founders is a man called Stephen Bassett. And Stephen Bassett, if for those that don't know, was the first ever UFO lobbyist in Congress. So he's been responsible for pushing forward disclosure from our government, which, as we know, has become more and more frequent now. And he believes, from all of the intel that he has from Congress, from people in the army, the military, that disclosure is imminent, and not coming in 5 years' time, but coming now, like literally any day now. He believes that the government will finally say, we have beings from another planet in our possession, and we have craft, and we're not alone. And so what we as, okay, let me backtrack for a minute. I interviewed Danny Sheehan. Danny Sheehan's one of the founders and the board members. When I interviewed him, I had only just first started out in this UFO world. I was obsessed with UFOs, but making film, And I sat down with him and I said to him, I'm like, one of my favorite films is Independence Day, Danny. What do you think of that film? And he looks me dead in the eye and he's like, I hate it. I hate it. I'm like, why? It was a great movie. It's one of my favorites. Watched it 50 times. He's like, because basically he said that it's racist and it's terrible for intergalactic politics, because what we're doing is we're saying that aliens, extraterrestrials, only want one thing, and that's to steal our natural resources and to kill us in the process of doing that. So he said that if these beings are coming here and visiting us, if they're going to come and land on our planet, what we're doing is setting them up for failure. What we're doing is telling everyone to be afraid of them, when it appears from all of the discussions I've had with people that have had interactions with beings, we have nothing to fear. And so the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is all about aligning experiences, people that have had abduction experiences, people that have had sightings, with filmmakers, so that they can say, this is what really happened. This is what these extraterrestrials are really like. These are the messages we're getting from our galactic brothers and sisters. Make movies about that. Influence the world in the correct way, instead of creating a false narrative that's going to end up with an extraterrestrial turning up in your bedroom and you grabbing the gun from under your bed and shooting it, instead of extending a hand and saying welcome.
As someone who works in Hollywood and works in film, does that translate and sell to a massive audience? I love Independence Day. It's my top alien movie. I've said that many times on the podcast. I love Signs.
That's
great
my favorite movie of all time. I love that movie.
Again, similar theme though. Everything kind of goes wrong. Thinking of The Abyss, a message behind that. There's always a disaster stroke apocalyptic theme to all these films, and that seems to translate to box office. That other message, that, I don't want to say love and light, it's not one of my favourite phrases in this whole subject, but that kind of nicer side of things, that more politically savvy side of things, and what that relationship with another species may look like, do you think that translates to Hollywood, and not just to Hollywood independent film, but that bigger budget that's going to reach a mass audience?
I think what Danny Sheehan and I think what a lot of us that are part of this alliance are saying is that it's not okay. It's not okay to keep perpetuating the lie that these beings are coming here to steal our natural resources and kill us. That's not to say that we can't have drama. As an example, using my filmmaker brain, a family of extraterrestrials could crash land in the backyard, and some of them are friendly, but then there's one of them that isn't, and he's super evil, and something terrible could happen with him. He could be trying to take over the earth, but then the other extraterrestrials can stop him or save him. So it's not that we can't have drama. Hollywood's all about drama, but does it always have to end with us exterminating the aliens and jumping around so happy that they're dead and they're gone? I don't think so.
That's fair. I understand that. You mentioned some of the founders. So co-founded by Stephen Bassett, he's been on the podcast a couple of times, well known in the UFO community. You mentioned a lobbyist and activist. And also Dan Harary. He's an entertainment industry publicist, has his own unique interest also in the UFO subject. He's not just coming into this blind. Now, how did those two get together? Are those two, is it fair to say, just going off the website and the Deadline article, the main players within this? I understand the hierarchy looking at it. You've got those two, then the board. Is that right?
So those two have joined together to make it. So basically, Dan is actually Steve's publicist, but not publicist, let's make Steve famous. Publicist meaning that when anything happens in Congress, Dan is responsible for getting that message out straight away. So anything that Stephen learns, Dan tries to get out as quickly as he can. But, I've been hanging out with some of the members recently, like we were filming a show with Steve, and so I got to meet Sean Jabonsky, who was behind Project Blue Book, and some other people, and it's just so cool because we're all believers. Most of us are experiencers. We're so passionate about telling these stories and about sharing these truths and these disclosures with the world, but it's just about, I guess, just doing it better. Doing it right and doing it better. Historically, UFO documentaries, for the most part, have been made by indie filmmakers. So people that just have this burning desire to tell a story, and they get $10,000 together and some iPhones, and they go out and create a documentary. Content's good, but the production value is really poor. And so I guess what we're trying to do is mainstream these stories and these messages and this content,
And is the opportunity there for folks to pool resources together potentially. You've got a lot of filmmakers, you've got researchers, you've got documentary makers, and thinking you could get together and obviously work together, maybe increase that budget, increase the reach. Is that right?
Right. So we actually have a inaugural board meeting tomorrow, and I'm so excited because Richard Dolan's going to be there and Nick Pope's going to be there. Haven't met either of them. Freaking dying to meet both of them, interview them, work with them, blah, 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 blah. So it's really cool for me and for other people in the group to get to meet our peers and like on the same level and be able to say, hey, what are you working on? Let's collaborate. I also find in Hollywood, when you're working on a project solo, it's good. But if you can find someone else and you can collaborate because you both bring skills and knowledge to the table, then that project just, explodes. So, yeah, I'm really psyched about it.
So how do you see that working? So in the UFO community, I don't have to tell you, Serena, people can be divisive. You mentioned Dr. Stephen Greer. He has his fans, he has his haters and detractors, and he has folks in the middle. You've mentioned Richard Dolan, Nick Pope, all the same in any number of UFO personalities. There is no one I don't think is universally loved or hated. There's always something there. How is that mix of personalities and opinions going to work, do you think, in this sort of setting? Because you seem to have very different ends of the UFO spectrum involved. So far, I mean, there's been a lot of respect in the group and mutual adoration and things like that. I think that it's healthy to have two people with opposing opinions come together because nobody's ever 100% right? So sometimes, if you can come together in the spirit of getting to the truth, then sometimes you can really help to forward our understanding of what's going on out there in this world. I mean, I've met Richard Dolan on the phone. We've spent some time together. Nicest man in the entire world. But we clashed on a couple of things. My personal opinion about extraterrestrials is that they're not that interested in becoming best friends with humanity. They want to come here and they want to be part of our life and involve us in this galactic community that we live in, that we're currently have been expelled from. But I don't think that they really want to become our best friends and hold hands with us and hang out here and integrate with us on Earth. Richard does. He really believes that. He thinks they have a really strong interest in helping us and what have you. So, it's just I think it makes for interesting conversation. And honestly, until these beings land here and have face-to-face communication with us, it's all speculation. And you mentioned Danny Sheehan, his involvement. I don't think there's a UFO group on the planet that Danny's not a part of right now. Obviously, Danny is uniquely positioned that he's got that legal expertise. Is that something he's providing to the group as well?
Look, he is. Well, I think what Danny brings to the table more so is because he's a member of a lot of these groups, he brings a lot of experience about what works and what doesn't work. So he really is actually helping with that formation and helping to make sure that this group, has value in society. Yes, he's almost like a mentor, I think, to Dan and to Stephen. He's such a good guy. Have you met him?
Do you know what? I've not had Danny Sheehan on the podcast. I was on a different podcast as part of a round table where Danny was on. He's one of those names that still escapes me so far. Not managed to get that elusive. The Hollywoood Disclosure Alliance. I'm sure they'll be able to arrange it for you. If only I knew someone as part of it. Oh, hi, Serena. Yeah, so I'll discuss that after, yeah. And there's a whole load of names, though, as part of this. You mentioned Richard Dolan, Tracy Garbutt there, obviously, Nick Pope, George Noory from Coast to Coast, actor Thomas Jane from The Expanse and Deep Blue Sea. It's really quite a range of names already. I wonder, under the supporting members tab on the website, you mentioned it launches officially tomorrow with its inaugural board meeting. That's tomorrow, is the 2nd of November, as we discuss this. Supporting members has it coming soon. Is there anything you can share on potential supporting members?
Yes, it's super exciting. So, what we didn't want to do was make this an elitist group of the Hollywood bigwigs that get together and discuss important things. We didn't want that. We're all really down-to-earth, easygoing characters. So what we're basically going to be doing is recording a lot of these meetings that we have, and every time we have collaborations with each other. So, for instance, if I meet Richard tomorrow and he agrees to do something with me, basically what we're going to be able to do is create different content to be able to share with the supporters. It's not something that's going to be monetized. Like, this is a non-for-profit organization, so we're just here because we're just for the pure love of what we do. And so, yeah, that's what will be available. So as soon as that's available for sign up, I encourage everybody to get on board, because you're talking about, you know, the biggest thought leaders in this world coming together. And I just think what's going to come out of this is going to be really cool, really magic.
Important you mention it's a non-profit organisation. People are always sketchy of any new organisation that comes up, whether it's something like this, which I think is relatively unique. We'll talk about something else pretty soon. You look at Merged Ryan Graves, who has a technology company that he's working as part of. There's aerospace divisions coming out. There's a lot of different groups with various angles coming at the UFO topic. So non-profit's one thing. There is a donation option, and just to address this, because people will straight away wonder, oh yeah, but you're asking for donations. What would a donation, because people can't make it right now, when you go on there it still says coming soon, pretty new group. What does a donation look like and where does it go?
So I don't know too much about that aspect of it. I can tell you, for one, I will not be making any money, unfortunately, from this. No, I believe the donations are going to be so that they can expand their operations, and just the money will help to actually just fund the back end. So even now, like, we've just started, we have something like 60 members or something like that. But we've hired a social media person. There's like a website manager, like someone has to do PR, or, you know, all of those sorts of things. So it will literally just be for the running of, there won't be wages given to anybody, or that's not kind of what's going on there. But again, like, I have nothing to do with money, so I don't really know.
No, that's fair. I think with anything like this, there are people who are never going to be happy, but a lot of folks understand there is an expense to running this. Like you say, just setting up a website, there's a cost. People to run it, manage it, all that stuff. So, very
these
fair.
aren't people, like, you know, like, I'm not wanting to talk about Steve Bassett's finances, but I mean, like, you don't get paid to be the UFO lobbyist. You know what I mean? And these groups will grow and get bigger. Like, you know, their vision is to have 1 million people as supporting members, so that Steve and all of the people in the group can get their messages out as quickly as they can. And, you know, that just ultimately will, I guess, cost money administratively. And why should he have to pay for that? You know, I guess. Yeah. But again, I don't know anything about those things. So, yeah.
No, that's fair. I wonder, when the group is up and running fully, and we're looking at November 2nd being that inaugural launch day, people will be listening to this on November 2nd. I wonder, do you know, what does a day look like? What does a week look like in the short term and long term running of the group?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. The first phase, so Steve and Dan's first vision, I guess, mission is networking. That's what they tell me all the time. What they want to do is just really get all of us together in a room and get us poised and ready, so that when disclosure does finally freaking happen, we're able to deliver those messages to the public as quickly and as truthfully as possible. It's so cool. You know, like, when I only met Steve maybe 6 months ago, we became instant besties. I love this man so much because he's out there fighting the good fight for all of us. You know, like, we're sitting at home watching our UFO documentaries. He's in Congress standing there and yelling and screaming and demanding disclosure all the time. You know, this man has dedicated his whole life to doing that. And so really, it's just going to be about making sure that when this information drops, we're ready and we can get it out to people like you, Andy. You know, like, the first thing that I want to do when I find out that some form of disclosure's happened is to call you and everyone else and be like, dude, this just happened. Pass it on. Get it out there.
Yeah. Now, let me get to, I had a few questions I was going to ask, but listeners worded them far better than I did. And I think there's some really good stuff here to go through. So, question from Peter. He asked, well, 2 questions. The first one is, does the HDA believe disclosure has been underway since Close Encounters, or even before movies like that, but potentially in secret?
Yes, there's definitely a thought process that there's a lot of people in Hollywood that have been given this information, and this information has obviously rolled out into some of the movies that we've seen. When you talk to people in our world, we believe that Close Encounters of the Third Kind is probably one of the more true to what we believe is going to happen situation. What we believe is that when disclosure happens, that, and there's all different ideas, but when disclosure happens, we believe it'll be to a small group of people, but a group of people that we all really trust. So we don't believe there's going to be lots of craft entering the sky like signs and having this mass huge disclosure. It's just going to be something small and intimate, but with people that they know are going to be able to articulate that message in a believable way.
Yeah, interesting. We mentioned the horror side of things earlier, didn't we? The big sci-fi blockbusters, but Close Encounters and E.T., both Spielberg vehicles, were much more loving, nice. There was a kind of a message.
Close Encounters is scary as shit. Like, that movie gave me nightmares, like my whole childhood, But yeah, you're right. It was still positive.
Yeah, it was a nice message at the end of it. Nothing was blown up. No one got attacked, and there was no big, massive special effects, that kind of side of things.
There was an abduction, but it seemed to be voluntary. Stuff happened. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't horrendous. Like, the humanity didn't end.
Yeah. And I was going to say spoiler alert, but it's a 50-year-old movie, so I think we're past that now. Peter's second question.
Because I've become friends with Paul Hynek. So Paul Hynek is the son of J. Allen Hynek, who was in that movie and things like that. And this stuff is real. This stuff is happening. Like what I love about the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is half of the people are like scientists. They're like highly intelligent people that earn big bucks in their normal respective careers, and they're putting their reputations on the line to like push this narrative forward. So, I mean, there's just so much happening.
Was there anyone who you wanted, or the group wanted to be part of it, who either declined for whatever reason that you could mention?
No. So far, everyone that we have asked has come on board. I don't know. Do you know who Caroline Corey is?
Yep.
She made Tear in the Sky, Among Us and stuff like that. She's my friend. And I was around her house having coffee the other night, and I told her about it. She hadn't heard about it. I'm like, you should join. When she heard about what it was, she was like, oh, my God, finally. And that seems to she signed up straight away. That seems to be like how it's all going, like we've been waiting for this opportunity to have a community and to be able to be together and do this.
Follow-up question from Peter. He asks, the film ARGO, which is based on a true story, highlights the relationship between Hollywood, the media and government, and especially three-letter agencies. How will the HDA be assured that disclosure is of the truth rather than a CIA disinformation, for example?
That is a really good question. We talk about it all the time. I believe the only way that we can keep our government accountable is by keeping our government accountable. People need to rise up, and they need to be rallying for this in a similar way that they rally for other causes. Why haven't we had 1 million people in the street with placards demanding disclosure? Again, people like to sit at home and complain about the fact that it's not happening, but, do something. We need to do something. We need to demand truth, not on our computers, but at Congress. We need to be part of that.
So into listener question from Joey. Joey asks, and you touched on this, I think, a little bit earlier, Serena, how will you balance fictional embellishments alongside factual storylines to make sure you don't muddy the waters? So I suppose I was asking you about those kind of big budget movies that bring in the mainstream audience, bring in the dollars, to making a factual story that keeps an audience interested.
It's a really, really hard question. And, there's always going to be movies that are painting people, the extraterrestrials in a negative light. I guess that all we can do is try and drown out that content with more content that is more positive. Like I said, still drama-filled, but not with the end game being that humanity has been destroyed by ETs.
Joy also asks, and I think this is a really good question, the mission of Hollywood Disclosure Alliance appears to be similar to what Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Media had been doing from 2014. In which ways do you think the objectives might align, and how do you think the HDA's vision and execution will differ?
I think that they will definitely align. I think they're just coming at things from two different angles, and they're also, like with the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, with, you kind of touched on it before, you know, there's lots of different personalities and different thought processes. I think that with the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, most of us are pretty aligned in how we feel and in our messaging, you know, like-minded people tend to flock together. So I would say that there'll probably be, you know, like a difference in like our ethos about what we believe is happening. But I think ultimately we all have the same goal, and that is pushing for disclosure and preparing everybody for when they finally come.
Question from Mr. Calhoun. He asks, how can Hollywood contribute to the public debate on potentially controversial and sombering aspects of the phenomenon and the history of UAP research, such as the Paul Bennewitz story or interaction between humans and non-human intelligence going back to prehistoric times? So maybe aspects of it that are not potentially in the public arena right now, so to speak.
So what do you want to know about that? Like, what are you asking?
So how can Hollywood maybe touch on the more awkward aspects of this phenomenon, the more somber aspects of the phenomenon? What if our history potentially isn't what we thought it was, and that's a big thing for the public? That's a paradigm shifting, moment there.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the moment I'm producing a whole heap of TV shows about abductees and like really delving into that world. I'm not sure if you've heard of Whitley Strieber before.
Yes,
he's the man that Communion was made about. Have you met him?
He's been on the podcast, yeah.
He's the best. I love him like so much. But anyway, so I spent like 3-4 hours with him and we went through his whole story. And when I interview people, I like to go really deep, really, really deep. Like, what did these extraterrestrials look like? What did they smell like? Was the texture of their skin like? Like, I want to know, like I was right there. And it was interesting talking to Whitley because the way he described his abduction was rape.
Yep.
He really believes that he was raped. And he describes it in great detail and the pain that he felt and how long it took for that to go through. And, I think that like what we need to do is we need to be very honest as storytellers. There is a lot of good, but there's a lot of uncomfortable stuff as well. Whitley would not change his life experience if he had the opportunity. I asked him and he said that he ultimately is glad for everything that happened. Obviously not the anal probing moment. But everything that came after it, and it's about being real and deconstructing this alien agenda. After talking to many, many abductees, whilst they've had these traumatic experiences, they tend to recover from them because they realize that they weren't being raped for sexual gratification. They weren't being raped by some evil, malicious serial killer type character that wanted to hurt or harm them. They were guinea pigs, samples were required by this extraterrestrial race for some reason. We hope to benefit them and us. They were taken by force sometimes, which isn't okay. But I think that a lot of these abductees look at the entire agenda and then they're kind of okay with it. Like for me, obviously I don't want someone to pin me down and extract my DNA. It sounds painful and terrifying, right? But then if ultimately I realized that they had done that so that they could save 1 million extraterrestrial children on another planet, I'd be good with it. You get what I mean? So, like in our quest for truth, it's just going to be really important that we don't go into these interviews with these people with an agenda. We're just going in there to figure out what the hell happened and why. If you have someone that is against aliens and thinks they're all here to kill us, then when Whitley Strieber tells you his story, you're gonna paint it in a terrible light. But if you're somebody that, believes that they're here to save us, then you're going to paint that picture in a positive light. I just call on all interviewers and filmmakers to just seek truth and try and keep their opinions out of it.
Because the answer might be a little bit of everything, to be honest. There might be an aspect of whatever this phenomenon is, or these beings may be, that do want harm in the human race. Some might be indifferent, and if harm's caused, so be it. Others, like you say, might have our best interests at heart, and that's, like you mentioned earlier, no one knows. We could all be wrong. Every one of us right now could be wrong, but we can't all be right.
One thing I've been learning, and like, again, I'm someone that was always into extraterrestrials, watched every single movie, read all the books, all that sort of stuff. But until I actually got into it and met all these people and did all the interviews and things, like you start to realize that there's thousands of different extraterrestrial races, thousands. And just like the thousands of different cultures that we have on our planet, some humans are great. Some humans are average. Some humans are neutral. Some humans, excuse my language, are fucking assholes, And I would say that in the galactic community, it's probably the same. We've been very fortunate so far up until 2023. We haven't been exterminated yet. So it appears as though the ones that are visiting us are benevolent, are friendly, because as you know, if they wanted to kill us, they could. COVID came from a bat, allegedly, and that fucked us up. So, I mean, imagine what they could do, right? We don't know. So it's a tricky one. But I think for the most part, it's a positive experience.
And it's funny, that's where I struggle with what a lot of Dr. Stephen Greer says. I know you mentioned little mentoring, but he can lean far too much to one narrative for me. For someone in the positions he's been in, he goes with the friendly stuff far too easily, and he can be very dismissive of other opinions. I notice he's not part of this group, obviously.
No, he's not part of this group. He's very much like that. Like one thing I respect about him is the fact that it's like, this is my story and I'm sticking to it. And like I said, I've spent time with him. I've interviewed him. I've got his story out, and it's incredible. And I guess because he's had this amazing experience, he was taken on board a craft. He met these friendly extraterrestrials. They developed a language together. Now he's able to teach millions of people around the world to communicate with them. Amazing. But I don't think he's met all of them.
No.
So I don't think any of us can, like I said, it's like generalizing what humans are like, because there's a lot of nasty humans out there, but I'm a nice person. I wouldn't hurt a fly, So if someone was to say that all humans are bastards and evil and murderous, well, that ain't true.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's right. That was the last listener question. Just to finish up, Serena, because you've been really good with your time, and this has all been very last minute for you. The documentary of yours you mentioned that's just been released on Amazon is We Are Not Alone. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that, and if they rent it or buy it, what they can expect?
Yes. So I believe that we're not alone, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to go and speak to the most clued in people in the UFO world and learn about why they think that we're not alone, and also learn about who are these beings that are visiting us? Where do they come from? What do they want for humanity? And should we be afraid? And so I talked to so many different people that are experienced this. Dr. Stephen Greer, obviously, but then Andrea Perron, who is famous for being the person that the movie The Conjuring was made about, Jacques Vallée, who is very involved in the Trinity Project, which was surrounding the sightings when the atomic bomb was dropped.
Mm-hmm.
Paula Harris, all people like that. And it's so interesting because when I interview them, I don't ask them the normal stuff. I'm like, tell me about the beings that you saw with your own eyes. What did they say to you? How did you feel? What impact did that have on you? Explain. Because what I want for my viewers is I want them to like really be able to visualize what these beings are, like where they come from, what they are, what they want. Instead of just thinking, oh yeah, it's a grey, big eyes, short, abduction. No, like let's listen to these stories from these incredible people, and also, like with Paula Harris as an example, she was an investigative journalist, top of her career, making so much money, so successful, winning awards, and then she has an experience, and now her entire life is devoted toward extraterrestrial stuff. So, like I think it's important for us to understand that all these experts have a why. Something happened to them to make them do this, and that's what the movie's about.
Well, I would thank you very much for your time, Serena. You've been wonderful. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is very much in its infancy. It launches on the 2nd of November. As we record this, it's the 1st of November. And the website is hollywooddisclosurealliance.org. The link to that and the Deadline article that announced this yesterday is all available in the podcast description as well. So, Serena, once again, thank you to you, Steve and Dan, for putting you forward to do this as well. And best of luck with the venture too. Look forward to seeing what it brings.
Thank you, Andy, and make sure you join.
Do my best. I'll have a look. Thank you, Serena.
Take care.
That is all for this week's show. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to leave the podcast a review on your chosen platform. You can like, retweet and subscribe. That would all be very much appreciated. The shows are being uploaded onto YouTube as we speak more and more. You can sign up at patreon.com/thatUFO podcast to access the shows ad-free as well. Please get in touch on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, That UFO Podcast. Of course, on Twitter, it's at UFO UAPAM. And again, folks, as always, keep looking up. You never know what you might see.
It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer, more like a hubcap designed by Chaucer, a little Baroque and quite steampunk, like Alice was playing bass for the Parliament of Folk. The little fucker hovered right outside of my window, and when I shoved out the screen, he made it an issue. I don't think he expected me to see his ass, but I'd had some champagne and smoked a little around. Meditative game of state full on meta. Can't imagine how it could have been any better. I got to the top of the stairs and there he was. Like, you awake? I was about to abduct you, cuz. I jumped back and nearly kissed myself, and I climbed out the window after the elf, and I woke up in my bed and there was something on my head and everything was weird and everything was red. I called out to my boys. They thought this was noise. They thought it was a dream. They thought it was my toys. They thought it was my problems, and they think I should seek therapy, and I don't know what to do because it doesn't really scare me. If you really want to know who I think I be, I think it's you and me and us and we and him and her and that and she and that thing over there and what's that, Jake? But if we're being serious, open your mind, consider your heart, consider time, consider your space, consider your lies, consider your life, consider your eyes. It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer. It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer.